A 3-point control valve housing. This one you're going to want to book for. Front cover, SCV comes off, front cover comes off, bunch of bolts to get it off of the housing. This one gets a little, not weird, but just careful. I'll show you you get some ultra tiny parts going on here, and so we'll go through it, but I don't know how much how much I want to make a video of this one, just because it's, I don't know, I don't know if I would recommend, just if you don't have a tech manual, you are not doing this valve. It's that simple. A John Deere tech manual, not one of them IT things. But yeah, they got that little tiny, or you see that little hole way down inside. That's a seated, that comes out. So we'll get her tore apart. So I got it taken apart. It's not overly complicated to take apart. All you have is just this piece of linkage in here that eclipses to that linkage right there. These ports are where the guides come out of, and this spring is hooked on here. So to take it apart, you can kind of fish some wire through there and pull on the wire, and then take your screwdriver and push that down off of there. Or if you got some longer needle nose pliers, you can try and fish it out. Sometimes you can grind a little notch in the pliers to kind of hook the spring a little better. Whatever you got. But before you go back together, for sure, put some wire through that, and leave a long tail of wire out here. So when you put that all together, you just take that wire and pop it right on. These guides, there is a top and bottom, so pay attention to that. And when installing them, the snap-on 1/4-inch extension is a perfect match for their face. You do not want to put any damage around that opening on either end. Bringing them out, who cares, because you ain't reusing them. And then pay attention to what needle you have. 4320s will kind of have this style, and pretty much every other tractor is going to have this style. Somehow this tractor had one of each, so figure that one out. But yeah, so then it's just clean it all up, clean everything up, new O-rings on your adapters or bushings and your caps. This one was missing the O-ring there. And then here's your adjuster, so you can see, if I lay them this way, you can see that little bit of slop in your valves right here. So by turning this screw counterclockwise, that's going to be this port right here when it's on the tractor. By turning that counterclockwise, that tightens up that valve clearance. So I bring them back all the way till he's tight, and then I go in a turn and a half, and that seems to be a good starting point. And then when we are adjusting 3-point, we'll go through that in the book. We have this plug here, and you go through that port back here. Weld your socket to the extension. That's the simplest thing to do. Buy a cheap 9/16 socket from the hardware store and a cheap extension. Weld them together, because then you never have to worry about dropping the socket. And we'll go through that book, and that's going to set this load and draft sensing adjustment. So when we get to that point, we'll go through that in the book, but not overly complicated. Just take pictures and pay attention as you're going, and you should be all right. This pin came in the side and goes through here, comes through here like that. So when you take this plug out and get that spring unhooked, then you get this top E-clip off, and then kind of wiggle it down. That's the only thing. It's a little game of Tetris getting this arm down here. But at this point, we'll unwrap our new seats and guides, or guides and needles, and start putting it together. Well, there's the new one is installed, and there and there I moved my camera the wrong way. And so all I did was take the needle and just barely set it on the old guide and kind of guide it in. And on this top one, you can take a punch and go through here and hold the guide while you slip the needle back out. On the bottom one or on both of them, you can take a screwdriver, put them in as far as you can with the needle without pushing the needle too far in, and then hold it in place and pull the needle out with a pair of tiny little needle nose pliers. Then I use a 1/4 inch extension backwards, and that is the perfect match to the faces of them guides, and it works very good. Pay attention to the guides, to the protrusion there, how they're sticking out before you take it apart, so when you put them back in, you know you got it fairly close. And you'll hear the sound of the cast iron when you're pounding them in. You'll hear the iron change, but just make mental note of where them are at. So if it sounds like, hey, this thing isn't really moving in, and you're like, oh yeah, that's right, I'm not near there, give it a little more. So now we'll just clean the housing up, clean everything up, and then clean everything up. And we got our O-rings and backup rings for our tubes there. And because these tubes go from the bottom of the housing to the 3-point housing. So we'll get everything cleaned up and start reassembling. While we're under our 3-point housing and cleaning it up, we want to inspect this plate, make sure the wire is still on our 4 bolts, or they're at least Loctited in, and this plate don't look like it has any cracks. They do crack once in a while, and so just give them a quick inspection. Otherwise, everything's kind of cleaned up. We'll get it over to the pressure washer there and give them a little bath and see if we can't drop it on the transmission. So we got our new guides are in, and our new needles are in. Now you got this ball and this spring. We got our seat in there as well. So now you got this ball and the spring that has to go in and stay in, while all these packings have to stay in place and this cover plate goes on. That's where a good stiff grease, and we've been getting this Dello grease. It seems like a really nice grease. I like it a lot better for assembly because it's a lot more stiff than the John Deere grease we were using. So any of these grooves where a packing goes, put a good little layer there, and that will help hold that packing in place. And then I will literally take this spring and scoop a wad of grease onto it, pick that ball up, shove it in there, and that will hold everything in place while you assemble it. These, I had said these are kind of a pain in the butt. These early models really aren't that bad. When you get to the 40 series and 50 series with the like your large frame, 4640 on up, with the hydraulic load sensing, then this valve gets very busy because you got several more. You got a big valve housing back here, like Shane's tractor had the orifice and stuff inside. You get a big flow control valve up here. It gets a lot more busy. These aren't that bad. They're not that bad. It just take your time, take pictures, and go slow. So yeah, we're gonna grease everything up, pack it in there, get this plate bolted back on. Then we got to put our 3-point housing on the tractor. The 4430's been kind of neglected for the last couple weeks. We've been trying to get other tractors out of the shop at the same time. You know, you're starting farming. So our corn seeds here, fertilizer in the wagon. This morning, I want to get this 3-point stuff done We're getting this cart out of here, and then we're going to bring in 3 more tractors. That one is waiting for parts yet. That's starting to irritate me, but it is what it is. There's nothing you can do about it. But yeah, he can go out. We got a 4430 transmission that can get parked right here, a 4440 head job that can get there, and we got a 986 or 886, just some air conditioning and hopefully some quick turnover stuff that can get parked in that end stall. So clean all this up, get this engine maybe over in that corner, and then get that engine on this house. So a few hours this morning, then we'll get cleaning. Well, let's see if I can do this one-handed here. Get a big blop. Touch the ball. Don't let the ball fall. And we're in. There we go. The grease is in for all the packings, and let's put it together. All right, let's put our housing on. We got our cam follower here. And this roller needs to ride on the back of this finger. And when you set your 3-point housing on, you want this finger pointing up. This finger, this arm rides on the back and rides against here. And then it pushes your linkage. So when you move your lever, you're not rocking on valves. You're changing spring tension and that whole ordeal. John Deere had very busy engineers back then. It's a good system, but it's like your fuel system. When you hit your throttle, you're not moving a rack directly. You're pushing a spring and a governor, and the governor is sensing what to do with the rack based upon your movement. Same here. You say, I want to go up, and then it senses where everything is at and says, oh, okay, you can go up. So we want that rolled forward, and we're going to slide that finger into here. So we got our gasket in place, our ports in place, and I need both hands because it's heavy, and we'll set her down.